The following recording is from the SA International Convention, which took place in July of 2017 in Newark, New Jersey. This YouTube channel is not affiliated in any way with Sexaholics Anonymous. For more information about SA, please visit sa.org.
Please join me in a moment of silence followed by the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thy will, not mine, be done. We would now like to ask for a volunteer who could come up to the mic and read the 12 promises.
Thanks. My name's Tony. I'm a sexaholic. The 12 promises. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we are halfway through. 1, we are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. 2, we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. 3, we will comprehend the word serenity. And 4, we will know peace. 5, no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. 6, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. 7, we will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. 8, self-seeking will slip away. 9, our whole attitude on and outlook upon life will change. 10, fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. 11, we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. 12, we will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. From the AA Big Book, page 83.
I'm going to pass it off to David.
My name is David. I am a sexaholic. And by the grace of God, my sobriety date's August 2nd, 1988. I kept trying to get John to trade places with me because he said for 14 years, the man who started the tape, for 14 years he was active in the program, said, oh yeah, God and I are great friends. And he never meditated. And then he started meditating and he said, my entire program changed, and I have a whole different level of relationship. And he said, I can't believe I was depriving myself of that all these years. So that was the opening of this session. It's not on the tape. I asked him to record it, and he wouldn't do it. And I read our literature. I don't read it every day as much as I used to. I used to read the same things every day. Not the same things, but I mean the same books. And I have a rule that I'll just pass on to you, that I never read more than 2 pages, and 1 page is better. Because the purpose of reading the literature, for me anyway, is to identify. And if I read more than 2 physical pages, I'm not going to identify. I'll be reading for content. It's a waste of my time and the book's, quite frankly, not that the book cares. And if I read 1 page or 2 pages, I have a reasonable chance of identifying. So this morning, my 2 pages in the 12 and 12 were at the end of step 2, and I thought, oh, that's the subject for this meeting. Because on page, the background for step 11 in prayer and meditation for me is what it's saying there on the last 2 pages of step 2 in the 12 and 12. That how difficult it was for me to, it's right here in front of me, but I won't. Some will be willing to admit, I'll change the language, some will be willing to term themselves problem lusters, but cannot endure the suggestion that they are mentally ill. And accepting that I have a mental illness, I didn't sign up for it. It's not like I went up and when I was a 4-year-old and entered into this disease, because I can track it from that age on. I didn't sign up to be mentally ill. It's just what I got. So what do I do about it is the real question. And the step 2 is so wonderfully clear of going through the things we tried, the things we wanted to do to try to get better, and none of them worked. I was blessed with a pretty good memory, and which is still holding up moderately well. And so when I came into the fellowship, one of the things that really did help me is realizing I had tried everything that anybody could suggest to stop, and all of it had not worked for me. And so I knew there weren't many options left, and fortunately SA was the option left that worked. The context of step 11, sought through prayer and meditation, Both of those are fundamental. And one of the things I've always liked in step 11 in the 12 and 12 is the sentence, those of us who have come to make regular use of prayer would no more do without it than we would refuse air, food, or sunshine, and for the same reason. And that has just been so essential for me to realize that this is not some pastiche added on to my life. It's as fundamental to me as air, food, and sunshine, and I would add sleep, although I did pretty well last night. And that it's intensely practical for that reason. Just as food and all that is something just really basic, so is prayer. And meditation for me is intentional time for prayer and time to listen. I would like to walk through the 11th step prayer, and this will take a few minutes, and then we'll switch over to Moshe. Because it's been important to me. It took me quite a while to memorize it. Most of the prayers are fairly straightforward. I finally realized there is a rhythm to the prayer, and in terms of alphabet rhythm, I mean, and that's helped me. The other thing is there are many translations because it wasn't written in English, and I have read many over the years, and I've never found one that's as useful to me as the one that's in the 12 and 12, so that's the one I memorized on that. When, Lord, make me a channel of thy peace. And when I say that to myself, I had this image of channels in me, one or more, that are full of sludge. And it's mental sludge, it's emotional sludge, it's euphoric recall sludge, it's lust sludge, whatever, sludge is sludge. And every time I open that, and this, I really dwell on this phrase in the prayer, make me a channel of thy peace, I have this sense of the sludge being moved along and often being dumped. I keep adding new sludge, but you know, if you've ever visited a sewer plant, this is nothing new. I love sewer plants. And to move the sludge on is just essential to health. That where there is hatred, I may bring love. I've always liked the way the prayer sort of gets into the biggie right away, to actually transform my hatred into love. That where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness. Roy does a wonderful job in the White Book of writing about step 8.5 to keep the focus. I tell people that I sponsor mostly to remind myself that the formula for an amends is I was wrong, and sorry, mistake, sad, apologize. None of those words will carry the heavy lifting that the word wrong does. Where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness. That where there is discord, I may bring harmony. I was talking with a guy on the phone this morning about how attached we are to conflict, and how it was all rooted in fear. And that for me to let go of my right to cause discord and instead embrace harmony, I need the reminder that where there is error, I may bring truth. That where there's doubt, I may bring faith. Both of those, as I've often said in other contexts, we all drift, we all make mistakes. My sponsor taught me to say, God, I made a mistake, help me not make that mistake again, and then move on, just keep going. That where there's despair, I may bring hope. Somebody was thanking me for being around for a long time in sobriety, and I said it was simply out of desperation, and still is. That where there are shadows, I may bring light. And that's, I think, what often is bringing things into the sunlight is an ongoing process, of course. That where there's sadness, I may bring joy. My contention is that sadness is how I make a genuine connection with another human being. And when I have that connection, I have that joy that comes from that connection. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. I have a rule that I use for myself, my rule of 180, which is I figure out exactly what I want to do, and then if I do the opposite, it'll always be correct. So comfort than to be comforted, to understand to be understood, to love than to be loved. It all is fitting in with my rule of 180. for it's by self-forgetting that one finds. You know, when I first came, you don't know, I'm going to tell you. When I first came into this program, I was told that it's a program of ego deflation and depth. It turns out that was a gross understatement. And self-forgetting that one finds has been one of the ongoing lessons, as well as the next. It's by forgiving that one is forgiven. And then I was not raised in one of the major religions at all, and I was also raised an atheist. I let go of that as part of this recovery process, which for me has been great. And I always had trouble for many years with the last line. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. And I said it, but I would kind of grimace for a long time because it's not how I was raised. And then one day I realized, wait a minute, David, what do you know that's eternal? Well, this moment, this present moment. As long as I'm alive, that's the only thing that's eternal, right this moment. So it's by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Could be letting go of the past, which I can't do anything about, letting go of my fantasies about the future, which I can't do or know anything about, and stay in the one eternal thing that I do know, which is right this second. And at this second, I'm going to stop.
Thanks, David. My name is Sexaholic from Phoenix, sober since May of 2013. It's so funny that I should be speaking about this topic, is that probably a year ago I wouldn't have had too much to say about it. I went through the steps with my sponsor, and after step 10, I asked him, okay, his name's Craig. I said, Craig, what do I do about step 11? And he says, well, I don't really like to tell my sponsees how that prayer or meditation looks. It's something you got to figure out on your own. I said, okay. And I remember actually the first time around, because I had relapsed a bunch of years ago, and I was working with a phone sponsor, and I said, coming from a religious background, I'm sure some people could identify, I said, oh, maybe like studying, that's meditation. He's like, well, not really. But I never really went past that, and, that went on for a couple of years. And then it's funny how this year, it was just amazing how God, works. At the beginning of this year, I was, thinking about, I'm like, I pray, and a lot of times maybe that was my form of meditation. I would take walks. I teach, so I get a lunch break, I would take a walk, and I would talk to God, just have some quiet. And I didn't realize at the time still how chaotic life was. And I called my sponsor. It kind of left the step 11 situation open. And I asked him, it says, the big book about taking meditation in the morning, and he kind of was just like, I thought, taking it lightly wasn't a big deal, because I felt kind of, a little guilty, like I'm not really meditating, definitely not in the morning. And he says, he's a big A guy. He's like, yeah, that's very important. I'm like, oh, really? He was like, yeah, you got to, it was already after I'm sober a couple years, you really got to do that meditation in the morning. I'm like, okay. I wasn't sure how to go about it. And then God comes again. And without getting into the details, I had some really traumatic thing happen over the year. And it had a lot to do with the fact of that my mind was still in chaos mode. And the therapist I was working through, here comes another message I got, is like, you got to do some meditation. I'm like, really? That sounds familiar. And she encouraged me to do these mindfulness meditations and, get an app. And she said at the beginning, it's going to be a little hard. I wouldn't aim for more than 5 minutes, and you'll work your way up from there. But I'm like, really, really? And I remember the first couple of times, it was very difficult. I'm just sharing this because it might be helpful to the newcomer, but I was just jumping out of my skin. I mean, it was unbelievable. I'd been writing, I'm doing step 10, writing my resentments, giving them up, trying to make amends, but I didn't realize how much was in there. I was just all over the place. And when I mentioned it to my sponsor, what the therapist had said, and he's like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. You need to come down and not be bouncing off the walls. And I'm like, okay. And I started, so the beginning it was hard, but after a week or two, I started enjoying it a little more. And, the therapist recommended 2 apps, and I was using them. But I wouldn't, till more recently, just amazing how God is manifesting himself. I wouldn't have realized, the topic of this meeting going from powerlessness to being powerful. I'm like, okay, I see I'm more calm. That's nice. that big thing we look for, serenity and peace. But I don't know, with the power, I mean, I understood the concept. I'm giving my will up to God, but I thought that more of like the steps 4 through 10 type of thing. But what was amazing is, just share this, my wife went back to school this year. She went back to graduate school. She wanted to become a therapist. And being, I guess being married to an addict and having her own disease, so believe it or not, she has that thinking, I guess, of, all or nothing, whatever it is, but she decided to do it full time. Now, to give you some background, I have kids. My oldest is 13. And I, of course, this is part of, I guess, where meditation comes in. She'd been running the idea by me. I'm like, yeah, sounds great. I didn't think twice about it. And then it was after last summer. We come back last summer, we were on the East Coast. And she starts up. I'm like, oh my God, what did I sign up for? This is nuts. And it all fell on me. And then, of course, my good old resentment comes up when we go to a counseling session. And the therapist's like, Mosha, these are great questions, but it probably would have been better to ask them about 3 months ago. And I'm like, oh, I'm talking to my sponsor about it. We're talking about the anger that's coming up. And he's saying, yeah, that's that codependent anger. Like, I should have spoken up. He's very into, very solution-based. And he's like, okay, so how are we going to, so the next time you're going to speak up earlier so you don't get into this situation of being resentful. I'm like, okay. So then as the years going on, and I'm managing, but it's very difficult. And, my natural state is to suppress my feelings and to be a people pleaser. And, it came up a lot. One character defect of mine this year is like the fear of confrontation. I don't want to speak up. My wife was happy. She's managing. She's getting through. She's getting good grades. And then this is where the meditation, I think the power comes in, is as I'm getting more comfortable with meditation, besides just having more peace and serenity, like David is mentioning and we're talking about, but I was more in touch with the feelings. I was unhappy. I was feeling very worn down. And just learning the program, I know that if I'm always feeling worn down, I'm putting myself into a situation to be worn down. And I was speaking with my sponsor about it, and he's just, he's going right at it. He's like, why isn't she doing this part-time? I'm like, I don't know, because there's a part-time option. And I, asked him, like, why don't we do this just part-time? We'll take it, instead of being a 2-year program, be a 3-year program. And, well, no, she, brush it off, and whatever the reason she did that. And he's like, no, I think you need to be doing this part-time. Your wife, whatever, you should bring it up. And I knew it was going to be, a rough topic, because she really just wanted to finish it up. And little did I know that part of the reason she wanted to do it in 2 years instead of 3 years is because she was planning on maybe having another kid afterwards, which my sponsor told me, no way, that's not happening. But anyways, I had that conversation, and it was absolutely terrifying for me, speaking up, being honest, saying I'm overwhelmed. And I can't say I did the best job of it, I had I guess you could say a debriefing afterwards with the therapist, and she's like, you're onto something. Your delivery wasn't the best one. But what kept me going and what keeps me going today, and what I think the power we talk about in the meditations, not just a peace of serenity, is because I felt this is what God wanted me to do. It wasn't just about me. It came me, then it was down to me and her, and I was resentful, and why are you doing this so full time, and you're not doing what you need to be doing. And instead, it wasn't about me. It wasn't about her. She is who she is. She's trying her best. I'm trying my best. But I think God wants me to speak up because it's just too much. And that's huge for me, because my natural state is just to keep on pleasing, but be resentful, and then in the old days act out. And to actually take the, that I did this year, is to actually go before we sign up for the next year of having another crazy year, and actually speaking up, to have the power to do that. That came about through working this. That's my sponsor, specifically Step 11, because I was just in touch. I was feeling, and I just wasn't happy. I was worn down, and there was something that God wanted me to do about it, because it wasn't just about me. It was better for the whole family. My kids need their mother present. I need a wife, and she needed that. She needed to hear how it was really affecting it. So, that's just my personal experience this year. And then, it's just amazing to come in. And then yesterday I was by the old timers meeting, and they're busy talking about meditation, and Harvey's saying how he got that app, and he needs a guided meditation, because if he just has open time, what he's going to think about. I'm like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Because a couple of the guided meditations are like, let the thoughts just flow freely, and sometimes that works out better, and sometimes I'm like, okay. But, to let it go, and I'm really, and then to be involved in a meeting with this, it's something a year ago would have been unimaginable for me. I could have talked about the other steps, but step 11, yeah, okay, talk to God. Meditation, I don't know, whatever. I didn't, have a way of describing that, but today, it really does make a difference, and it brings so much peace and serenity, and it brings power because it just, I don't know, now it's something I look forward to. I feel, peace. I feel God loving me, and I feel when I need to take action, my sponsors, encouragement, I just feel that, that love and power come. So I think we're going to open it up now for people to share. Here are the guidelines for sharing at this meeting. In participation, we avoid topics that could lead to dissension or distraction. We also avoid explicit sexual descriptions and sexually abusive language. The emphasis is on honesty, recovery, and healing, how to apply the 12 steps and the 12 traditions in our daily lives. No crosstalk, please. If someone feels another is getting inappropriately explicit or is focusing excessively on the problem rather than on the solution, they may so signify by quietly raising their hand. Do we have, how many minutes are we?
We have 25 minutes.
So give it 3 minutes apiece, or?
I'll have a 3-minute timer. I'll give you a warning.
Okay, so whoever would like to share, please come up.
I am Steve. I'm a sexaholic. Powerless over lust, pornography, masturbation, fantasy, codependency, and wanting to be lusted after. Sober since August of last year. That's my standard kind of qualifying at my home groups. And when I heard this topic, I immediately thought of a reading in the White Book where it's written, he's talking about his prayer, God, please take this away from me, while piteously whining so I don't have to. And that reading never struck me until I actually heard the audio version of the White Book, which is narrated by Roy Kay. If you've never listened to it, I suggest you do, because sometimes I've read that a lot, but it never impacted me until I heard him read it. And that's often the way it is. When someone else reads something, it can have a profound impact on me. And this topic has been coming up for me with a sponsee talking about, how he's powerless over these thoughts and everything. But being powerless does not mean I don't have choices. And that's what meditation has done for me, has created a self-awareness, a mindfulness of being aware of the choices that I have. So I don't have to, the first thought is not my fault, but it's where I go after that is my responsibility. And that's the powerful part, is being aware of the choices, which has been critical for my meditation. That's what meditation has brought for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, my name is Derek, and I'm a sexaholic from Cranford, New Jersey. And I am currently working step 4, and I'm happy to be working the steps. I've been in programs since 2009, and the first 7 years I worked the 2 steps of Derek, which did not work. Those steps would be, I can do whatever I want, and I am God. So I thought, hey, let me try this program of recovery and work the steps. I always thought, that was great for other people, just like having a sponsor was great for other people, just like making and taking phone calls was great for other people. When my therapist last September said, try meditation, I said, that's great for other people. But I did, I started. And just like other shares have said, that the first time was rough, maybe 3, 4, or 5 minutes at a time. I'm now up to about 15 or 20 minutes, and silent meditation does not work for me. And guided meditation sometimes does. I do loving kindness meditation, which really plays against my defects of unlovability and feeling unworthy of another's love. And by telling me that I'm loving and I'm kind, and I have a whole list of things that I am, it plays against my lust, and it really helps me overcome my defects for that day. And when I don't do it, like when I don't do any other of the things in my program, I really suffer. So it has helped me a lot, and not that I do it every day, but it certainly helps to have in my arsenal of tools to combat lust. I was raised a Protestant, thank you, and went to church every week and really had no relationship with God. And the funny thing is, God was always there. And when I came back to God and actually converted to Catholicism when I was 43, a few years ago, that also transformed my life. And that my higher power, the God of my understanding, is Christian, but it helps me work my program. And doing spiritual Bible readings along with approved literature readings help me, and allows me to become the person that God intended me to be. Thank you for letting me share.
Hi, I'm Kathy. I'm a sexaholic. My sobriety date is January 7th, 1993. And thank you. Nervous. Anyway, I saw the title of this session, and I said, that sounds good. It sounds like a good thing for me. Here, let me get, yeah. So my meditation is spotty. And I find that I really notice when I'm not meditating. I have a feeling that I'm managing things by myself. And that's not a good thing for me, because the more I think that I'm managing things by myself in any area of my life, including my sobriety, the more lonely I feel, the more isolated I feel. And when I get back into daily meditation, which for me recently is, I have an app on my phone, Hazelden app, that brings up the 24 hours a day for that day, or any day. And I read that reading. I also have recently started reading Daily Reflections, which is an AA book that I downloaded. I set my timer to concentrate on the concepts that I've just read. I feel so unsuccessful a lot of times when I meditate. My mind is all over the place. Basically, I feel like higher power, come on. I mean, it's like it gives my mind a chance to go about everything that is going on in my life. But I have found that there are many days when I will get one little phrase that comes into my mind, thank you. And it might be, it's going to be okay. Or everything is, recently when I got, everything is not your responsibility. Where did that come from? Not my own thought. And I do believe in a power greater than myself. And I know that I'm supposed to be sober, and that I'm supposed to be giving service and passing along this program to other people. So I feel unsuccessful in my human attempts to meditate, but it's not all about me. It's my higher power working through me and appearing through me. And as I work with my sponsees, I feel that my power greater than myself is with me. In other words, that a power is given to me. So I go from powerlessness to having some power. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your shares. Dave, sexaholic from San Antonio. So I may be weird, but I try not to get too cerebral about meditation. I don't like there are a lot of times now I find I just don't like to think. And I love the idea that, and I meditate. I don't just do it in the morning. I do it whenever. I could be sitting out there right now and meditating because I just want to clear my head. I just don't like thinking a lot of times, especially when things get really bad for me. And I love the 11th step prayer. I meditate on 11th step prayer. For me, it's very melodic. There's breathing that goes with it. It's if you read it, and there's an intake and an exhale in that prayer, and I like silence in my head. I can be in a crowded room and I can get silence in my head because I just clear my head and I just don't want to think. And about 20 years ago, my wife and I bought a cabin in the mountains in Colorado, and every summer we go up there. And in fact, I was just up there for the past month, and when I walked into the airport, it was just overwhelming. The noise and the people. it's very good to get away if you can, and just walk. Walking is very meditating. Just taking a walk. For me, even running, when I go for a jog, it's also meditating. But I meditate when I'm having a problem. Like recently, 20 years ago, my mom died, and my father was there, and I moved away. Thank you. I moved away from home as soon as I could. I couldn't wait to get the hell out of Dodge, and never wanted to go back. And my brother was very resentful for me for doing that. And then my father died 2 months ago, and went back, and my brother was very angry at me, very resentful, and in that moment, I meditated over that situation, and eventually, what came from that meditation, and I meditate on the 11th step prayer. How does it apply to the situation? Because the 11th step prayer for me is relieving myself of me. It's all about focusing on others and what I could do for others. And what came from that meditation in that situation with my brother and that resentment was I was able to finally reconcile with my brother. And we're starting for the first time in our lives to build a relationship. And meditation is just sitting in silence for me and listening. And the 11th step prayer helps me listen. Thanks.
Good morning, I'm Ken from the Chicago area. I'm a sexaholic. I apologize for coming in late. As I was coming in, the very first word I heard was practical. And I thought, gee, I'm in the right place. This is a very practical step. I start almost every day with prayer. Every once in a while I get up and I get going, and I haven't done my prayer and meditation, and I can always tell partway through the day that something's not right. And I can literally restart my day just by stopping, going back to prayer and meditation, and then going on. I like the title of powerlessness versus, was it power versus powerlessness? The powerful. I don't think of it as the power to move. I think of the power more as a foundation as opposed to sand. It provides power to me to be me, to stay sober. It's an anchor for me, so whatever happens to me during the day, I've got a foundation that I can get through the day. And that's the kind of power I get through the meditation. I have to tell you, everybody's afraid of step 9. I was afraid of step 11. I don't need a computer. I have all this pornography stored in my brain. And if I don't have it stored, I can make it up and fantasize. And I thought to myself, how am I ever going to meditate? Because every time I sit down, I'm fantasizing. In fact, I would come home from work, sit in my recliner, tell my wife I was going to relax, and she didn't know it, but I was really sitting there acting out in my head. So how am I ever going to meditate? And I grew up Protestant, and we pretty much make up every prayer new. And I kind of looked down on ritual prayers. But I have found that I was wrong. It's happened to me a lot of times. And I memorized a lot of prayers. I memorized the prayers of the program. And when I can't clear my head, I start reciting memorized prayers. And that clears my head. So it's just something that worked for me. I put it out there. Hopefully, it'll work for you. I focus on gratitude when I do my Step 11 work, and I do it multiple times a day. I focus on my blessings, not on what I have, not what I don't have. And that sure helps keep me sober also. And finally, the prior speaker talked about being aware of feelings. God doesn't speak to me in words, but God does speak to me. He speaks to me by inserting thoughts directly into my head. And he speaks to me by inserting feelings of gratitude or different. And in my program, I was so busy suppressing feelings because they were always so awful. But now in recovery, I can be aware of those feelings, and that's the way God speaks to me. So that's something I have to do while I meditate. And thank you.
I'm Brian. I'm sexaholic, and this is a topic on 11th step. And but I just was struck by the 11th promise, I don't come from a tradition that numbers the promises. We just read them. But the 11th promise is, we will intuitively know how to handle things, which used to baffle us. And for me, one of the biggest benefits of meditation is intuition. Without practicing meditation, I had no intuition. And the other benefit of meditation, and there's a lot of benefits, but the other one is we pause when agitated. I was unable to pause when agitated until I started my meditation practice. And so the other thing is I've got this, it's a blessing and a curse, but God gave me a categorizing mind. And so I just share with you my categorizing of this. It says prayer and meditation. It doesn't say prayer / meditation. There's a distinction. They're different things. And for me, prayer is anything that if there's words involved, it's prayer. Prayer is vocal prayer. And vocal doesn't mean out loud. Vocal means using words. So prayer is using words. Meditation is wordless. And there's two main categories of meditation. There's the imaginative, which is that where you start with words, like Lectio Divina or different things, where you start with words, but then you move out. The words trigger a feeling, an emotion, or a visual image, or you're somewhere. So there's a whole category of imaginative meditation. And then there's the concentrative. You can concentrate on a sound, you can concentrate on music, you can concentrate on a visual, you can concentrate on a walking pattern, a mandala, you can concentrate on a lot of different things. And most of the mindfulness people and in a lot of the Buddhist practices really, really recommend concentrating on breathing. And that's the practice that I use. So just if you can just think about that, meditation is wordless, and it's either concentrating or imagining.
I'm Michael. I'm a grateful recovering sexaholic. Great topic, and I love the from powerlessness to power, because that to me is the main issue in my addiction, and also the main solution for my recovery is about power. For me, I grew up feeling so incredibly powerless in so many different ways. One of the ways it physically manifested itself was I was a chronic bedwetter, and I think I was at a meeting yesterday. They talked about try to exert willpower over diarrhea, and it was the same thing with bedwetting. I tried to exert willpower. I was shamed into that I was drinking water until and I would try to stop and I couldn't, and eventually I just said I'll just sabotage it. But so there was that, and it wasn't until I found lust and pornography and then later forms of acting out that I actually felt power, and that, I think, more than anything else, was the rush that I got, that feeling of power, that I could control and manipulate this situation or this event, and I could change the way I feel, and I could feel good about myself, and that sense of control and power. And of course, the great irony is that from almost the very beginning, I was powerless over that. That it immediately had power over me, and I need a power greater than myself to for every part of my life, but obviously with the addiction, because I don't have any power. And I'm finding all these new areas. I keep on putting myself into situations, thank you, where I am being oppressed or feeling oppressed, and I need that power to be able to learn how to do things differently. And it really does come through that conscious contact with God, as I understand Him. And I love all the different things been saying about meditation and about ways to access that. But I know that the solution is about finding a power greater than myself. Thanks for letting me share.
Hello, I'm Steve. I'm a sexaholic. Oh my God, pressure. I love practical tools. The thing that's helped me the most in 2017 was from my sponsor about prayer and meditation, and I too have a wandering mind. I like to imagine that I can sit there for 20 minutes and do it, but I cannot. Prayer also, I can start with a prayer and think I want whatever I think I want to pray about. But then what's helped me the most, though, is my sponsor had suggested for me to imagine that I'm going to sit in my higher power's lap. And so we have this particularly large chair in my living room. And in the morning, I will ask God if I can sit in his lap. And then I will actually hold the back of the chair as if I'm holding on, and then to whisper my prayer out loud, because if I just leave it in my head, it just swirls around in a swirl. But if I say the words out loud just in a whisper, then it has to form, and I can either tell if I'm making something up or if it sounds fairly legitimate, and I feel like God's heard me. The other thing is I can do that either as a frightened 11-year-old boy, or if I'm having a mature 55-year-old grown-up business problem, I can move to the kitchen table, and then I have 3 higher powers. We can sit around the table and discuss what we need to talk about with coffee, and that helps. That helps also. And then, from a practical standpoint, I like to work out and swim, and I've learned that if I swim a mile, I have these certain laps that I dedicate to my higher powers, and so we'll spend laps 15 through 18 on these certain prayers, and and it really keeps me focused, and it invites God into my workout. And if I'm I mean this, it really helps me during the day and in the gym specifically. Like, my higher powers help me lift, so if I'm at the squat rack, I can invite them in for a series, and so I'm getting both. I mean, it really helps me stay sober in the gym. So there you have it. Thanks.
Wow. Sorry, Joe, recovering sexaholic. What came to mind today was in terms of my meditation, is how I try, and boy, I really try hard to meditate, and that's been the problem. So I have to remember it's sought through meditation, and that's so critical for me to remember. And as I'm doing this, my higher power reminds me, whenever I start to try in my meditation, he smiles and says, "Okay, let's start again. Remember, I love you totally. All you have to do is to be. Just be. Because everything else for me is about my defenses, about trying to be something I'm not. So I have to remember that the real power only comes when I don't try. So thanks very much."
Step 11, do you want to say anything about that? He'll do the closing paragraph in a minute. God makes no mistakes. What a wonderful ending. Well, let's try again. That was great. In the AA Big Book, step 11 begins on the bottom of 85 and then continues, ends at 88. And 86 is this page that, if you have not become familiar with it, I recommend it, that gives very specific instructions, line by line, do exactly what it says at night and in the morning. And then the next day, let's try it again, And the last line, almost the last line of that section on step 11 is, it works, it really does. And that's what brings me back to 12-step recovery, to the AA Big Book and 12 and 12, over and over again. It works, it really does. Now, I have found, and I can testify, that it has never worked if I don't do it. So it works if I do it, and that's the other thing. The one other thing is, at the end of step 11 in the 12 and 12, I hold on to this, and it's been mentioned implicitly over and over again this morning. Perhaps one of the greatest rewards of meditation and prayer is the sense of belonging that comes to us. When I came to my first meeting, they happened to read the solution, and I was pretty raw, to put it mildly. All of us come in through the doorway of pain, and we got to those last words. We were making the real... I get emotional. We were making the real connection. We were home. And I just started crying. I cried at my first meeting. And because I realized that I had felt I didn't have a home, at least since age 6, and I was 42 at that time. And that sense of belonging, that I actually have a place and a purpose in this world, has been one of the great benefits over and over again of step 11, and of experiencing that power being available, and that love being available to all of us as well as to me. Did you want to?
Thanks, David. Thanks for all the shares. In closing, anything you have heard at this meeting is strictly the opinion of the individual participant. The principles of SA are framed in our 12 steps and our 12 traditions. Remember that we never identify ourselves publicly with SA in the press, radio, TV, or films. Neither does anyone speak for SA. This is an anonymous program. Please keep the name, address, and phone number of anyone you meet or learn about in SA to yourself. The shares we have heard here were told in confidence. Please do not repeat what you have heard about another member to anyone who was not actually here at this meeting at the time that it was shared. Please, what we say here, when we leave here, let it stay here. It's time to close. So let's all stand up, and maybe we'll head out with the third step prayer.
A moment of silence for the addicts still suffering in and outside of these rooms. Third step prayer. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help. By power